Bonjour. Today we're going to start talking about our imperfect tense, or en français, l'imparfait. And the first thing that's important to understand is that it is a past tense. Whenever we use l'imparfait, we know that we are talking about something in the past. And this is in comparison to our present and our future. So whatever tenses you know or that you're going to learn, we always want to divide it into those three categories. Is it something that happened in the past, that's happening in the present currently, or that's going to happen in the future? So in our future, right, we know it could be something like I'm going to go, or in French, je vais aller, right? And that's something that hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen later. In the present, right, something that is currently happening right now. I am eating in this moment. Je mange, right? But we know that I'm eating in English, this form, does not exist in French. It's just je mange, present. It can also be in general, generally, I eat at noon. Right now, it's not noon, right? But generally, every day, I'm eating at noon because that's lunchtime. So that's still present tense when we talk about our habits. So we've been practicing that a lot with our routines. The difference between what am I doing right now versus generally, habitually, what do I do during my day? And that always uses the present tense. Okay. Now there's no difference in French. However, when we get to the past tense, there is. Okay. So now we're going to add in our past. And what we know so far for past is our passé composé. J'ai mangé. Okay. I ate yesterday, last week, last year, this morning, whenever it was, it is finished. Okay. Now, I will say, well, in English, we often say I was eating, but I just want to warn you right from the beginning that anytime you say I was eating, I was sleeping, I was jumping, I was laughing, does not necessarily translate directly into the imperfect in French. Okay? So a lot of times the equivalent would be I was eating, but not always. But we should know, we've talked about that you have to be careful with those literal translations. Okay? Just like with this one, I am eating. We do not translate I and am and eating. Right? We learn that this represents the present, and this is how we make the present in French. So in English, very often we represent the imperfect tense with I was eating. Okay, now this, we'll talk more about this imperfect tense and the different ways it's used. But what I want us to start with is this idea of generally. So in the present, we have two. Currently, right now in this moment, I'm eating versus generally, I eat. So in this past moment, whether it was yesterday morning, last week, last month, whatever time it was, it happened at that time. Okay, so passé composé. Generally, I was eating at 11 a.m., but now I generally eat at noon. So this, I typically eat at noon, is my present tense. Okay, but I was eating at 11 before, now I eat my lunch later, is my imperfect. Okay, and so basically we're going to start our imperfect by looking at the use of I used to. So we have this expression in English. We cannot translate it in French. It's just going to be when we use the imperfect tense, this is what we're implying. It's something that you generally did in the past, but you don't do it anymore. So I used to eat at 11. Je mangeais, imperfect, at 11. But now I eat at noon. Okay, so I used to be blonde. But now I'm brunette. Made that feminine. I used to live. So now notice that the used to has no place in my French sentence. I used to live is all just this word, habiter. I used to live in Paris, but now I currently, present tense, live in Boston. Okay, let's say I used to have 2 sisters, but now I have 3 sisters. Okay, so I used to be. Était. I used to live. Habiter. I used to have. Have. Okay. So now that we've kind of talked about how we're going to be using the imperfect, we'll look at how it was made. And luckily for the imperfect tense, it's pretty easy. Était, right? We've been using c'était or j'étais. I know that many of you have been using that throughout this year just because it's so common. You so rarely use j'ai été or ça a été with the passé composé, just because a lot of times because it's longer to say. So c'était and j'étais is just so much more common, and that's why I've been having you use it throughout the year. So this is the imperfect verb that you've recognized. We've also seen it in the imperfect in other verbs and in other readings throughout the year, so it may look familiar. But we can see this ending, AIS, for the je form. AIS, and as we can see with c'était, my il, elle, on form, AIT. Notice that our patterns are still there. So no matter what conjugations you learn over your study of French, we always want to remember those basic patterns that you first learned. That SST pattern, right, stays the same. And how about our new form? Well, we know that our ending is ONS. The only little thing is I'm going to add in an I with my imperfect. The vous form ends with EZ. And just for the imperfect, I'm going to add in an I. And my ils else form, following my pattern, ends with an ENT. And for imperfect, I'm going to add in AINT. Okay, so these are what your endings look like. And pretty much I just want you to think about in terms of making the verb and in terms of the stem, what makes the most sense based on the verb that you have. The only one that's irregular is être. Right? But it's still easy to guess at. Right? So even though je suis, tu es, il est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont, right, is pretty irregular. We don't have this ET stem. With the imperfect, you do, right? So it starts with ET, so it's été, right? So j'étais, tu étais, ils, elles ont été, nous étions, vous étiez, ils, elles étaient. Okay? And notice that just like we're used to, these all sound the same. J'étais, tu étais, il était, ils étaient. Same pronunciation. And we just have to remember to add in the sound for the I, right? So, nous étions, vous étiez. Okay, and we can see habiter, so my stem is habite. Avoir, my stem is have. Let's see. Prendre is going to be prenne. Je prenais. Devoir. Je devais. Boire. Now this one's tricky, right? Je buvais, right? Remember that some of them have that stem change. Je bois, tu bois, il boit. Nous buvons, vous buvez, ils boivent. Okay? So we're going to use the buvez. So technically the imperfect does come from the new form. And that is how you would find the stem, but I don't want you to be going through and analyzing what is the stem and trying to put it together. So I just want us to practice using these and you'll get used to them. Okay, so je pouvais, let's see, pouvoir, je pouvais, aller, j'allais, faire, faisais. Okay, so nothing crazy with these stems and these verbs. So we're going to be starting practicing with I used to. So what did you used to do? Okay, so remember that all of this is going to be habitual, right? So I was blonde. That was a constant. That I'm not talking about a specific day. I'm not saying yesterday I was blonde. I'm not saying, right, Tuesday at 2 a.m. I was blonde, but by 10 a.m. I was brunette, right? I'm just saying in general, I used to be. I used to live in Paris. So this is not something that you would use to describe a specific day. So we're going to talk about your childhood, right? So what are things that generally, typically, you used to do or be or have or play or watch when you were a child? I don't want to hear about February vacation when you were 6 years old. I don't want to hear about your summer vacation to Disney. I don't want to hear about that one time that you were sick or that one time that you got a new dog. Those are all specific events. I want to know generally, habitually, what your life was like, used to be like when you were a kid. Okay, so for example, j'habitais à Marblehead, j'avais 2 frères, j'aimais jouer avec des poupées, j'aimais lire des livres. Now, I might not talk about one specific vacation, but I could say ma famille voyageait chaque été. So we used to travel every summer, right? That's generally what we used to do. I'm not talking about a specific time. Right? Now, these are pretty stilted sentences, right? I'm just kind of listing things, which is okay for this, right? So it's not a great paragraph. You could talk about other people in your family. So now one thing you wouldn't want to do is in this scenario is talk about age because that's specific to 1 year. Right? So here we just want to generally be talking about things that happened. But, right, maybe ma mère aimait cuisiner tous les dîners, etc. So, okay, so we're going to start using our imperfect, talking about things that used to be in the past. Okay, so it's a past tense. It's generally, habitually. We're using these endings, AIS, AIS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, AIENT. And generally, our stems are pretty easy to figure out and guess at. So you just want to practice doing that based on the verb that you want to use. Okay, notice that my verbs always still follow that pattern of j'aimais jouer, a conjugated verb with an infinitive. It doesn't matter what conjugation this is, we still follow it by an infinitive. Okay, if we were going to have an object pronoun, right? So, j'aimais le faire. I liked to do it. As long as I've given in the previous sentence what it is, okay? Notice that my object pronoun is coming before the infinitive. If I had a reflexive, okay, I still have to follow all of those rules. Je me réveillais à 7 heures, right? And that could, a good one to talk about. I'm sure that when you were younger, you went to bed at a different time. So, je me couchais à 8 heures du soir, right? 8 o'clock in the evening, right? So all of those other rules that we've learned about verbs stay the same. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions. Again, we'll still be practicing this a lot, and really with the rest of this year, we're just introducing and getting used to the imperfect, but you'll be practicing and learning it a lot in the next couple of years. Merci.